Hello everyone and welcome to a new video. Today I will show you how to reduce the intensity rating of your coasters. There is nothing more frustrating than building a beautiful coaster only for it to end up with 1 excitement and 20 intensity. In this video I will first discuss the effects of a high intensity rating, then I will tell you the causes of a high intensity rating and how to solve them, and at the end I will demonstrate it by reducing the intensity of some coasters. Once your intensity rating goes above 10, your excitement rating will be reduced by a quarter. If you also pass 11 intensity, that happens again. It also happens at 12, 13.2 and 14.5. This means that if you have over 14.5 intensity, you lose over 76% of your excitement rating. There are a few exceptions to this. Some coasters, like the Floorless, Corkscrew and Stand-Up Twister, don't get the excitement penalty until 10.40 or even 11 intensity. I don't know why this happens, and I also don't know the entire list of rides that this applies to. However, it is still a good idea to keep the intensity below 10, as guests are far less likely to go on a ride once it passes 10 intensity. Now let's talk about what actually causes the high intensity rating. The most common reason is excessive lateral G-forces. When you go through a turn or twist, you get lateral Gs, and if they exceed 2.80 at any point during the ride, you get a massive intensity boost. If your lateral Gs are above 2.80, you get 3.75 extra intensity and 2 extra nausea. This is a big penalty, but it doesn't always put your intensity above 10, so it's not always catastrophic. However, if your lateral Gs also exceed 3.10, you get another 8.5 intensity and 4 nausea on top of the previous penalty, for a total of 12.25 extra intensity and 6 extra nausea. Your excitement rating also gets divided by 2 if you exceed 3.10 lateral Gs. Now that you know why it is so important to keep the lateral Gs down, you would likely also want to know how to do that. The simple answer is to just go slower through elements that produce lateral Gs and banking your turns. In this table you can see the maximum speed you can take every element at without getting excessive lateral Gs. Note that the vertical turn isn't in there, as it doesn't give any lateral Gs. You can see that banked turns can be taken a lot faster than unbanked turns, so if your ride suffers from too high lateral Gs, it is a good idea to bank all your turns if you haven't done that yet. If you want to know the exact element that produces the problematic G-forces, you can use the graph function of the game. It can show you the G-forces at any point during the ride, allowing you to easily spot the problematic parts. In RCT2, the graph also turns red if the forces are too high. One final note on lateral G-forces is that even though 2.80 lateral Gs already shows up as red on the stats screen, you don't get a penalty until 2.81 lateral Gs. There are also 2 other G-forces, positive vertical and negative vertical Gs. Both don't give any penalties, but a spike of, say, 8 positive Gs will still give a lot of intensity. If any of your G-forces are red, it might be a good idea to reduce them. Now we'll move on to the problems that are a bit harder to spot, but also easier to understand. These are all basically just having too much of something. Take a look at this coaster. It doesn't look particularly intense, yet it has over 10 intensity. If you look at the stats, you can see that it has more than 30 drops. Every drop adds intensity, so having a lot of them will give a lot of intensity. The same goes for inversions. A long coaster with 9 or 10 inversions might sound great, but that intensity will really add up. Sometimes it is really not obvious what causes the high intensity rating. In cases like that, it might just be that you have a little bit too much of everything. If you have 15 drops, 7 inversions, 5 positive Gs and a top speed of 130 km per hour, nothing stands out, but together they will push your intensity rating over 10. Now that we have discussed the causes of high intensity and how to solve them, let's see it in practice. I have built a couple of coasters that have over 10 intensity and I am going to bring it down to below 10 on all of them. This first coaster has over 20 intensity and a quick look at the stat screen tells us that that is because it has 3.48 lateral Gs. If we follow the track from the start, we see that it has an unbanked small slope turn that it takes way too fast. Let's bank that turn and see the result. This is a lot better, but the lateral Gs are still too high at 2.88. There are 2 other small unbanked turns in the track and they're right at the end. I think this is our last problematic point, so let's remove it. As you can see, I have removed the small turns and small spiral before them and replaced them with a big spiral and an S-bend. If we now test the ride again, we can see that the maximum lateral G's are only 2.06 and the intensity has gone down to about 7. The next coaster is very short, yet it still manages to have over 10 intensity. When we look at the stat screen, we can see that it has almost 8 positive G's and minus 5 negative G's. I have a feeling that these are jacking up the intensity a lot, so let's reduce them. Alright, I've swapped out the small steep to level pieces at the bottom of the drops for normal steep to gentle and gentle to level track pieces, which vastly reduces the positive G-forces. I have also made the second hill a lot taller, reducing the negative G-force at the top of that hill. If we look at the stats, we can see that while both the positive and negative G's are still in the red, they're nowhere near as bad and the intensity is a nice 8.14. The third coaster is a wooden coaster with just over 10 intensity, even though it doesn't look particularly scary. However, if we look at the drop count, we can see that it has 25 drops, which is a lot. Since the intensity is only 0.05 too high, we don't have to do much. Removing the last couple of drops is all it takes to bring the intensity below 10. Up next is a coaster that nicely showcases the fact that some coaster types just have worse stats than others. This stand-up coaster doesn't have any problems. 4 inversions, 9 drops, no high G-force and it doesn't go that fast. Despite that, it still has over 10 intensity. This is simply because the stand-up coaster has a really high base intensity rating. As a comparison, I have built the exact same design for the twister coaster. If we look at the stats, we can see that its intensity rating is more than 3 points lower than that of the stand-up. This problem is unavoidable and all you can do is make smaller coasters for the more intense types. The last example might be a bit of a surprise, but it is one case where the intensity penalty from lateral G's is actually useful. If we look at this Giga coaster, we can see that it actually has great stats. However, if we place this in a park where the guests are said to prefer more intense rides, no one will ride it due to its low intensity rating. Building a Giga coaster with a high intensity rating is very expensive, so that might not be a viable option. However, if we unbank the first turn, we get lateral G's of 2.84. This gives us 3.75 extra intensity for a total of 9.19. This is a perfect intensity rating if guests prefer intense rides and it didn't cost us anything extra. We have now arrived at the end of the video. I hope that this video will help you build better coasters and get the intensity down when it is just too high. If you have any questions about the intensity rating, leave them in the comments below. If you want to ask me questions directly, you can also join our Discord, which is linked in the description below. Thank you all for watching and I will see you in the next video.